We are approaching 1 million subscribers on our YouTube channel. Can't believe we're even close to this. Can't thank you guys enough. If you haven't already, please go hit that subscribe button. Lots of fun NBA content coming your way. One very complex situation, and I lived it. I was a part of it, and it was roughly 3 months, I think, after you became commissioner, was the Donald Sterling tapes that leaked prior to Game 4 of our first round series against the Golden State Warriors. And look, I was involved with a lot of discussions with my teammates. I was not involved with discussions with other players around the league, and I was not involved with discussions with the league about what had to be done. And it seemed like at the time there was like a pretty harsh zero tolerance to what was said on those tapes. And I'm curious, in your opinion, like how close were we to an actual walkout or boycott, not just of our team? Because I've heard, since that series, of course, that perhaps the entire league was just going to walk out and boycott these games.
The direct answer is I'm not sure. Just as a reminder to people of how quickly that all unfolded, that I heard that tape for the first time on a Saturday morning. I think it had been posted by TMZ literally in the middle of the night. And I banned Sterling for life by Tuesday. And so I've listened to some of the commentary about those 4 days now, in some cases many years later, and at least me dealing with a real-time situation, it was not my sense that I was facing necessarily a league-wide boycott. And in fact, Kevin Johnson at the time, who was the mayor of Sacramento, but was working closely with the Players Association, trying to work through this issue. Doc Rivers, others who I was talking to, there was more of a sense of partnership around it. I don't remember ever feeling threatened in a way where, and that's how some of the commentary reads now, that unless you do this, this is going to be the outcome. It felt more for me that, again, it was all happening so quickly. I had been the commissioner for 2 months at that time, that I was getting as much input as I could from people in the broader community. I was talking to players individually, other team governors, the Players Association, but at the time it was really Kevin Johnson who was helping work through that on behalf of the players. And then a lot of other leaders who, again, because I was fairly inexperienced there, and whether it was my old boss, David Stern, checking in with him, but people like Ken Chenault, who was the CEO of American Express at the time, Bob Iger, who was at Disney. And what was interesting, as I asked others for advice, nobody said to me, this is what you should do. People said, this is the process I would follow. No, and in part, I think nobody told me what to do, because where I ultimately ended up with the ban for life, that's not a term of art in our NBA Constitution. Ultimately, I decided that's what was appropriate. But most people who I was asking for advice from didn't know what my range of options were. And in fact, it got very complicated, but I had the power as the commissioner to ban him for life, but I didn't have the power unilaterally to take away his franchise. That can only be done. It's almost the equivalent of an impeachment process where there's a hearing in front of his fellow owners. They ultimately, it's almost the equivalent of a trial, which would have had to happen. And of course, what ultimately happened is his wife, Shelley, sold the team. So I'd only say, again, I was definitely influenced by what I understood was the player reaction in a league that's 80% African-American to comments that he made about Black people in particular. So I was aware of all that, but the answer is I don't know how close we were to potential boycott. My sense was, especially in the playoffs, talking to a lot of players, there was a sense like this is unfair to us. Like I think to the extent you'll recall, there were some outside commentators who were telling the players they should be boycotting. And I think the sense from players was like, this is a league problem. This is your job. You should be dealing with this. It's unfair to put us in the position and say, unless, we're not standing up for our community unless we boycott. This is our lives. This is our livelihood. And I took that responsibility very seriously, but not to the extent that somebody was saying, and therefore you better do this. It was more, okay, I'm new at this job. This is a unique set of circumstances. And it was getting a lot of, obviously, attention well beyond what was specifically in our league. And it felt like there was an opportunity, too, to make clear what the values of this league were.
It's interesting because that a lot of that conversation that was happening with my friends across the league and within our locker room centered around that. Like, this is unfair to us. We've worked our whole lives to get to this position where we're in the NBA playoffs playing. It's like it shouldn't be on us. Look, I think to some degree that popped up again in the bubble during those meetings. I was not there. We had gotten eliminated, but in talking to players, like there was a sense there that was part of the conversation as well. And look, I'm I can't put myself in your shoes completely, but I would imagine that you felt an immense amount of pressure to get it right.